What's up, guys? Teddy Cornwell here. Welcome to the Underdog Talk. Something about the underdog. Today we have the Dragon Slayer on the Underdog Talk. But before we get into this interview, I have to give this gentleman a proper Underdog Talk introduction. Hailing from New Brunswick, New Jersey, today's guest is the first athlete to ever exhibit sirations on the gluteal muscles. A man who was inducted into the IFBB Hall of Fame, the first ever Arnold Classic champ, a three-time Mr. Olympia runner-up, the CEO of Gaspari Nutrition. I am proud and honored to present Mr. Richard Gaspari. What is up, Rich? How are you and the family doing?
I'm doing very, very well. Thank you so much, Teddy. Thank you for the introduction of, what I'm about and who I am. It's striations, but yeah, I was the first bodybuilder.
Yeah.
It's cool, but I was the first bodybuilder. It was more about setting a new standard in the sport in conditioning. What I did in the sport was although the winner was Lee Haney, what I did is I set a standard in conditioning that no other athlete has done before me when I did it. And that was showing something as weird as your glute muscles that were back in the day, they were covered up. I saw them as a muscle. And what I did is something very differently. When I was getting in condition, I noticed that I had striations in my glutes. And if you look at today's bodybuilding, you have bodybuilding, and then you have classic. Classic, you see the trunks that they wear, that their glutes are covered. That was the glute. That was the type of trunks that were worn when I competed. What I did is I also changed the way trunks were worn. The way trunks are worn today is because of myself. What I did is I cut my trunks to show off my glutes. And now you see the men's glute. You see the men's bodybuilding. You can see their glutes. When they're posing, and guys that have striated glutes, you can see the striations. Guys like Ronnie Coleman. But the guy who made those trunks were me. I set that standard in the sport that bodybuilders had to wear trunks like that to show off their glute muscles.
Yes.
So that's something else I contributed to the sport. If I was wearing the normal trunks that now the classic bodybuilders wear, you would never see that. So I went and got my trunks cut, by this girl named CJ, who still makes trunks to this day for bodybuilding, fitness, figure women, bikini women. And I asked her, hey, can you cut these trunks up? Almost like like they're called Brazilian cuts. So that kind of shows my ass, and I don't want it to ride up my ass like a G-string. So how do we do that? And, I was using some glue to stick them on so they didn't go up my ass. Sorry, I'm using the word ass, but
you're good.
That was something that I contributed to the sport in the 80s. I was very young. I was in my early 20s, when I became a top pro. People don't realize like I was already a veteran in the sport by the age of 25. Most competitive bodybuilders don't even make it as a pro into their late 20s or 30s. So it was during an age of like at 20 years old, I turned pro, and by 25, I was a veteran in the sport.
And Rich, I think the reason I said that is I don't have any of that, so I'm not very familiar with that. And second of all, thanks to you, Rich, I'm actually having my first show on July 17th, and I'm going to be wearing one of those things. And all my boys are making fun of me and laughing at it, but I'm just ready to show off my glutes too and try and be like you. So thank you, Rich. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So before we get into your career, I gotta ask, why the Dragon Slayer? How did that come to be?
Well, I never named myself the Dragon Slayer. That was named by a writer. His name was Jeff Everson. His wife was actually Corey Everson, who won multiple Miss Olympias. You may remember that name. It was during the late 80s. She was one of the top bodybuilders in the world as a bodybuilding woman. Her husband, Jeff Everson, was a big writer for Muscle and Fitness, Flex. So he saw the tenacity in me. He also saw that I was, it's funny, you call your show Underdog. I was always the underdog in my life. of always being the guy that would never make it, but made it to be one of the best.
Yes.
So when it came to bodybuilding, there was many bodybuilders that were, that were supposedly better than me, maybe genetically more gifted than me. But because, I was able to get in better condition, I was able to have better, presentation, I was able to look at every angle to make myself better than people that had better genetics than me, I was still able to become one of the top bodybuilders of the late 80s and 90s. And in doing that, I was always the underdog. I was always the one like, Rich is the underdog. But because I was the underdog, I was like the Rocky. People favored me, as being, one of the, the guys they wanted to be like. They figured, well, Rich do it, I can do it. When you looked at Lee Haney, or even look at today's bodybuilders, they're like, it's unobtainable. But they looked at me and, believe me, I had a great physique. They look at it and they say, well, Rich did it, and he did it through hard work and perseverance. Anyways, Jeff Everson did an article on me, and he said, like, Rich is like a dragon slayer. Rich is able to beat the unbeatable. A dragon slayer is a mythical fighter that kills dragons. And if you kill dragons, you have this big, huge monster that, a human being can actually, slay. So I was beating genetically gifted bodybuilders much better than me, but I was able to get better prepared. I was able to, come in better condition. I was able to give a better presentation, and I was able to beat these guys. So, it basically said is Rich is a dragon slayer. He beats the unbeatable, and he ended up becoming one of the best bodybuilders. So that's how I got that name, and it stuck. It was never something that I gave myself,
That's good. That's good.
And even today, like, calling yourself a dragon slayer is someone who can beat all odds. If you're a dragon slayer, you can beat anything in life. And I still consider myself a dragon slayer, because either in, bodybuilding and now in business, being a dragon slayer is just beating the unbeatable.
And I think it's just a badass name too. So I love it. So I want to start from the beginning of it all. And first I have to ask the question, is it true that as a teenager, you used to sneak into Rutgers University weight room to get a lift in? Is this accurate?
Yes.
Wow.
I was 13 years old, and I live very close to Rutgers University. Actually, one of the connecting schools, Livingston College, which is, I lived in Edison. So you said, I was born in New Brunswick, but I resided in Edison. One of the Edison and New Brunswick are very close together. So just crossing this, Brooker Stream, there was the Rutgers gym. And I'd sneak in there because during the spring and summer, they'd have the door open where the gym was, and it had all this weight equipment, and they had a universal. So, one day I was a kid, I was walking around, and I went there and said, wow, look at all this gym equipment. So I went in there, and I started, I just started training in the gym, and I'd come every day, and I was training, and they never said anything because they maybe thought I just looked very young, college student, because I was 13, 14 years old. Finally, it caught up. One of the guys are like, "You go to this school?" And I'm like, I didn't know what to say. So they ended up, throwing me out of the gym. They ended up throwing me out, and I ended up going then to another gym, the first real hardcore gym that I found, called Health and Strength in Highland Park, which is another town next to New Brunswick. So yeah, I did sneak into the gym every day, like clockwork. After school at 3:00, I'd sneak into that gym, and I was training, 5 days a week in there.
I mean, you had that hunger at a young age, Rich. I love it. I mean, I was scared to sneak into the kitchen at night to grab a cookie. So wow, I'm impressed. Now I want to skip forward. Obviously, you found the gym. You became in love with the process of fitness in the gym. So at 21 years old, 21 years young, I should say, you became a professional bodybuilder after
Yes.
already competing as an amateur and absolutely crushing it. So at 22 years old, you compete in your first professional bodybuilding show, the IFBB Night of Champions, and follow up with the legendary Mr. Olympia later that year. So what made you want to compete and then push yourself to such extreme limits?
Well, as you know, I started training at a very young age. I started competing when my first show was at 15 years old, and it was just I was driven to want to be a bodybuilder, and I knew at a very early age that I found my calling of what I was going to be. You know, years before that, I was like 10, 11 years old. One of my friends, I was playing ball with my friend, and went into his basement, and I noticed his dad had this weight set, and then he had these stacks and stacks of muscle builder magazines, and back then they were all the bodybuilders that Joe Weider had. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, Frank Zane, Robbie Robinson. I got to see all these guys in the magazine, and back then I didn't even know these guys were real people. To me, they were superheroes to be able to develop their bodies like that. And I said, this is what I want to do. And this was at 10 years old. I'm going to be a bodybuilder. I knew at 10 years old, but I didn't have the capability because I was too young, but I always knew that's what I wanted to do. And that's why, the first weight set, my brother had this rusty weight set in the basement. I started using that. When I found the gym in Rutgers, I started training there. And then I found this other gym that was in Highland Park, was this old grungy gym that was in a basement. I went there, I was about 15 years old, 14, 15. I went to that gym and I went into that basement and I saw all these like people lifting. They were bodybuilders and they were all amateur bodybuilders in the local area. But to me, it was like, oh my God, I found all these guys training, and there's someone that, and what I did is just started asking questions to every single one of these guys to learn about bodybuilding. And little by little, I just, they called me Mr. Question because I'd ask so many questions, on how to train, how to, build my body. And then I started actually getting the magazines and following the routines in the magazine that Weider had, and followed those routines to build my body. So it was all a process, to how did I get to that point where I wanted to be a pro bodybuilder? I started competing in local shows. My first show, I got 10th place. The second show, I got 6th place. Then I got 3rd place. And then I won the show. The first show I won as a teenager, I won the teenage division in the light heavyweights. And the heavyweight I went into the men's division and won it, but I didn't compete in the men's division. So I go, I must be pretty good. If I beat this teenager, yet he went into the men's show and he won the men's show, but I didn't go. If I would have went against him, I would have won that show as well. And he lost to me. So I go, I got something going here. And I started competing in the local shows and winning all the shows in New Jersey. I won the show. I didn't win the Miss New Jersey, but I had a show called the Jersey Cup. I won that show at already at 19 years old, at over 200 pounds, at 21, at 20, actually, at 19, just turning 20. Then I went to the Junior Nationals. I won that show. And then that year at 20, I went into the Nationals, which was in San Jose, California. And I got 5th place in my first, national show. I was an unknown. And I was recognized by a guy named Ed Connors, who owned the Gold's Gym in Reseda, and actually in Venice Beach. He was the owner of all the Gold's Gyms. And he said, he's always looking for top bodybuilders. He brought a lot of different bodybuilders like Jay Cutler and Flex Lewis, and so many people this guy brought to become pro bodybuilders or pro wrestlers. Anyways, he goes, I got a gym in Reseda that I'd like you to manage. Would you be interested in moving to California? You came 5th in the heavyweights, and I was short, I'm 5'8". I was going against guys, 6 foot tall. He goes, if you go into the light heavyweights, you'll win your class, and then you can turn pro. So I took that opportunity, and what I was told when I was winning all the local shows, you're a big fish in a little pond, but once you go to California, you'll be a nobody. I was driven and said, there is no way that I'm going to be a nobody. I'm going to California and I'm going to be the Dragon Slayer. I'm going to take over California. And I was just I want to say cocky, but very confident. I started training at the Gold's Gym in Venice, the World's Gym. And this is the gyms that all the top pros that were in the magazines were training. And I challenged every one of those guys because I was squatting 785. I was benching 520. I was pressing over my head, 320. I was super, super strong. And I started training, I took the job in Reseda. I started training there. And that's where I got noticed by Lee Haney. Lee Haney, saw me, and he basically, asked me, would you like to be my training partner? He goes, I'm watching you and you're an animal. He goes, you're like frothing at the mouth like a dog, like a rabid dog. And he saw the energy and the passion. And he's like, I'm getting ready for the Mr. Olympia. I was still an amateur. I told you, came fifth in the nationals. I decided to go as a light heavyweight into the nationals. And my plan was to win that and then go into the world championships to win the Mr. Universe. And back then, unlike today, you had to win the nationals and then you had to win the world championships to turn pro. Started training with Lee Haney. He taught me a lot more how to hone in on my body to make it more balanced. My legs were too big for my body. I needed more shoulder width. So I developed my shoulders more. And he basically, assessed my body to get it to be more symmetrical. And I did all that, pushed Lee Haney to his first Mr. Olympia win. And I actually that year won the nationals and the Mr. Universe. And I knew that this was my calling. I got my pro card and I was like, I want to become the best bodybuilder in the world. And, from that point, when winning the nationals, I was 188. The year before that, I was a heavyweight. So you understand, I really had to over diet to make that class. I went into the first pro show, which was the Night of the Champions. I was a dark horse. No one thought I would do anything in the sport because I was a light heavyweight at 188. But I went into that Night of the Champions. I went in that show at 210. So from 188 to 210, I went into that show. And at that time, that was about the size of the body, the bodybuilders, but I was ripped to shreds. I was big, ripped, and I was ready to win. And I pushed the winner of that show. Everyone thought I should have won, but I pushed the winner of that show, Albert Beckles. He won the show, but I came in second place. From that point on, I started getting all the magazine coverage, Muscle and Fitness, Flex. All the magazines wanted to cover me. And I was one of the favorites in the Mr. Olympia that same year. And I went into the Olympia at 22 years old, and I got top 3, third place in my first Mr. Olympia.
And speaking of Lee Haney and the Mr. Olympia, you follow up as runner-up to Lee Haney in 1986, 1987, and 1988. This is no small feat. People do not know this. They don't know bodybuilding, but this is the biggest show on earth. So would you mind talking about the training and the progression that goes into something like competing at such a high stage or a high level?
Well, once I won the nationals and then won Mr. Universe, I turned pro. I moved away from California and I moved back to New Jersey, and I became a pro bodybuilder. I started doing exhibitions and seminars to make my living, making money. And, I had booklets. I was always an entrepreneur, booklets to sell. And I did very, very well, as an entrepreneur in bodybuilding. But I knew then my goal was to compete as a pro bodybuilder and make money as a pro bodybuilder. I trained, I would train twice a day, 6 days a week, training in the morning, going home, eating, taking a nap, coming back in the afternoon, training again. So I did what's called double split training. I would train off season. I would train my body once a week. Pre-contest, which is about 8 to 12 weeks out, I would train my body parts twice a week. So my whole body would be done in 3 days and then repeated in 3 days. And that's why I would be done 6 days a week. And I would do double splits, meaning I would train in the morning and then come back and training again because I wanted to be fresh in how I train. So that would take, in the morning, it would take another hour and a half to do a body part, 2 body parts. And then I'd come back at night, do another hour. And then when I was getting ready for shows, I would put a lot into my presentation, into posing. So that would be hours in a posing room, just, showing my body, posing, going through routines, making up routines, going through my mandatories to really present your body. Bodybuilding, all the hard work is in your training, but then if you don't present yourself well, and that's some of the things that I have, that I see today's bodybuilders, it is getting better, that they don't put efforts into the posing, and posing is everything. Because when you present yourself, it's how you can be able to show your body to, how your body looks from all the hard work. If you don't show your body right, all that hard work goes to waste. So you are spending about 5-6 hours a day in the gym, training, posing, cardio. On top of that, you're eating, 6 to 7 meals a day. You're watching your diet. You're calorie restricted to lose your body fat, but keep muscle. So it's all done, as part of the process of being a pro bodybuilder. On top of it, to make a living, I would travel, to different places for exhibitions, meaning I would pose at various shows to show off, who I was, or I would do seminars. Seminars would be me talking about, my training regimen, my eating regimen, because people wanted to know what I did, how did I get striated glutes, and what was my training programs, and blah, blah, blah. So I would do that for a living. And, I started traveling in the US, but then bodybuilding is an international sport. I was traveling all over the world. I was making money. I would go stay a month or 2 months in Europe and do a seminar every day and bring tens of thousands of dollars that I was making, $1,000 a day, just, going from place to place to place to place, and then selling pictures, selling my booklets, all these things that I do to make a living as a bodybuilder.
And I mean, Rich, speaking of hard work and dedication, in 1996, I mean, you end your historic, and Hall of Fame career in the IFBB San Jose Pro Invitational. Now, we talked about, you being a Hall of Famer. In 2004, you get inducted into the IFBB Hall of Fame. Congratulations. Well deserved. Such an honor. What was your reaction to when you found out you were inducted into such a high, society?
I mean, I really didn't look at it like that way. I mean, I knew I did my work. And then I guess from all the accolades, they were starting, giving me notice. I was inducted into IFBB Hall of Fame. I was giving a Lifetime Achievement Award by Arnold Schwarzenegger. I got a lot of awards. I don't even know. I got so many awards, after my career, from bodybuilding. I got inducted into the Muscle Beach Hall of Fame. To me, that was a big deal because, there's a bronze plaque of me there that's there forever. And there's bodybuilders there from the 1920s, when Muscle Beach was big, because I lived in California for over a year and a half. So, I did train in Venice. So I was able to get that, award given to me for being, living in Venice. So that was kind of cool. What do I think about it? It's all great. The accolades of getting that is great, and being recognized. When I got the Arnold Classic, when I won the Arnold Classic, that was a great accomplishment to be the first winner. But really, what was really cool is getting the Lifetime Achievement Award. That was given to guys like Sylvester Stallone, Jack LaLanne, Ben Weider, all these different people involved in the sport. So getting that Lifetime Achievement Award was a big deal for me, that Arnold recognized me as, as someone that not only attributed something as a bodybuilder, but then attributed after his career into, the sport, which I did with my supplement company.
And I mean, speaking of your supplement company, I want to rewind, actually, as you were still competing, you start the legendary brand, Gaspari Nutrition, in 1998, which you actually created while you're in your garage. Now, Rich, I can just imagine you in a hazmat suit mixing different, ingredients. But how did Gaspari Nutrition come to be?
Well, as I spoken earlier, I left no stone unturned when I was a pro bodybuilder. And because, my so-called genetic limitations, I had to look at every single way that I can be better than my competitor. And one of them was through supplementation. Today, we look at supplements as, bodybuilding supplements is something that's everybody knows about, pre-workouts and aminos. But when I was competing in the 80s, it wasn't really, there was some supplements, and I look at advantages of how they can help me. Certain things like creatine has an advantage. Branched chain amino acids have an advantage. protein powders have an advantage, but none of that was really used by those bodybuilders of that day. So I looked at it and said, well, here's an advantage of using supplements. And I did use them when I competed. So I had a really strong interest in the value of supplementation, And when you say supplementation, remember supplementations are supplements to food. And I believe that they could give you that, even if it's 5% edge, 2% edge, that gives you an edge above your competitors, to train harder, to get leaner, to have more energy, all these things that supplements do. I looked at that and I started looking at it in like 1996, 97. I was almost, when you talked about the last show, I didn't place very well. I was already injured. What retired me is I started having issues with my spine. I trained so hard that I was having issues overall. And, like Ronnie Coleman retired, I had issues where it was causing atrophy of my muscle and issues that were not making me look the same as I did. So even no matter how hard I trained, my body was not reacting to the training as efficiently. So I saw myself, even though I was working really hard, placing lower in shows. So I go, something's wrong. And then in that the last show, which you said was which year was it? 1996.
Yes, the San Jose.
I was getting ready for 1997 for the Night of the Champions.
Wow.
Going into that show, the bodybuilders have already gotten much bigger. Guys like, Flex Wheeler were there, Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman, all these bodybuilders were a much bigger breed of bodybuilders. So my first show that I was going to go in at 240. And my normal weight was 210 to 220 as my max. So I was going to go in a much bigger bodybuilder into that Night of the Champions. Well, getting ready for that show, I herniated a disc in my neck. It basically debilitated my right side and put me into retirement. While sitting in bed, knowing what am I going to do? I'm not going to make money anymore from my body, is when I sat there and said, I'm going to create Gaspari Nutrition. And I created my company from that point in 1998. The year later, I started going to manufacturers, learning about, how I can make products. And let me tell you, it wasn't that easy. Like, I had this very great career in bodybuilding, but I had some setbacks. I went through a divorce, lost money, went into personal bankruptcy because I had my contract taken from Weider because I couldn't compete no more. And what happened to me is I lost everything. I sold everything I had and moved back to my parents' house from, having a Porsche and having a beautiful house on the water, being a top pro bodybuilder, to selling everything, moving back to my parents' house, selling my Porsche for a minivan and using my minivan to make deliveries. So I had to take 2 steps back to go 4 steps forward. And a lot of people don't want to make those sacrifices, but a lot of times it's necessary for you to move forward in life. So I made that sacrifice, after having such a successful bodybuilding career, to say, okay, now I'm not going to use my body, I'm going to use my brain. And I started Gaspari with the same nutrition, with the same attitude as my building my body. I'm going to build a business. So I had to start from scratch. Like I said, with a minivan, I took the money from my house. I bought supplements with it and started selling them and turning them over. And little by little, going place to place, selling them to different gyms and stores, going to bodybuilding shows and having a 10 by 10 booth and people looking at me say, wow, poor Rich Gaspari, look at him now. He's sitting there selling products, out of the back of his car. But you know what? I had to start from scratch to build it back up. And again, when you talk about underdog, the whole thing about being, an underdog, I believe that through hard work, perseverance, planning, that you can persevere in anything you do.
And I mean, Rich, I've got to end this with, when I took Super Pump Aggression, this is not who I am, and this is embarrassing, but I was genuinely staring people down in the gym. That's how good this pre-workout is. Like, I have never taken a pre-workout as strong, as dosed, and as just, my performance was out of this world. So now, Rich, I know you were a busy guy, but are you down for some rapid questions before I get you out of here?
Okay. Yep.
Favorite nickname, the Itch or the Dragon Slayer?
I would say the Dragon Slayer. The itch was given to me by Lee Haney because when we were competing, you understand, I was trying to beat him. So he called me Rich the Itch, because I was there right up his ass to try to beat him, in the Mr. Olympia. So that's why I was called Rich the Itch. But Dragon Slayer, I think, is a more commendable name as we know, because what it means. I learned more about what it meant now to be a Dragon Slayer than when I was a kid getting that name given to me.
Yeah, I would. The Dragon Slayer is just dope. Favorite Gaspari Nutrition supplement?
My favorite product is my product called Anavite. It's a multivitamin, but it's 3 products in one. It's a combination of multivitamins, high-end multivitamins, high-end minerals, as well as a good dose of L-carnitine and beta-alanine. Beta-alanine will lower lactic acid. Carnitine will help increase energy within the mitochondria of the cell so you can train harder and also burn fat. So my Anavite, if you're going to take any of the products, is my number 1 product I would use.
And I've taken it and I love it. Favorite flavor of Super Aggression Pump? I have to say, Jerry Mobster Italian Ice was a game changer for me. So Rich, what's your favorite?
Yeah, since I'm from Jersey, that's why I call it Jersey Mobster.
Yeah,
and but I don't know. There's so many. We have like 7 flavors right now. We just came up with Grizzly Gummy, which is gummy bear flavor.
Yes.
We have Blood Orange, really tastes amazing. I like the orange or the citrus, but right now my favorite right now is Blood Orange.
Okay, that one was really damn good too. I think they're all really good. So it's a hard question. Last 2 questions are big, Rich. Talk like Rocky for the rest of your life, or have to box Rocky in his prime. Now, Rich, I wouldn't just throw you in there. I'd give you 6 months of training.
Talk like Rocky?
Or what? In his prime.
I think I could talk. Hey, you doing? This is Rocky.
Adrian. Yeah, I mean, I can't do it, but that actually sounded really good. I'm not gonna lie. That was really impressive. Wow. Yeah, I think we're just gonna have to say that you might talk like him because that was really damn good. Wow. Wow, that was not.
Yo, Adrian, how you doing? When I was a kid, I was a big fan of. You talk about Sylvester Stallone. I rode my bike to go see. The Rocky film. I was like 12 years old to go see that movie, the first Rocky. And I was so intrigued. I wanted to be a boxer, but, I ended up being a bodybuilder. And it's funny, I get to meet Sylvester Stallone years later. And here's what's pretty amazing. I went up to to Sly and I said, you were a huge inspiration for me to be who I am as a bodybuilder. And he goes, oh, you are a huge inspiration for me. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, you were the most ripped bodybuilder. In my other Rocky films, I got ripped the way you were. So he got all ripped up. Remember when he was ripped when he fought Clubber Lang?
Yes.
A lot of that, he said he was inspired because he saw how shredded I was, and he got himself ripped. And those movies were back in the 86, when I was really at the top of my game. So he was inspired by me. So that's kind of cool that one of the biggest inspirations, that I had said the same thing about me.
Wow. My mind was just blown there. I'm not going to lie. Final question. Now, this is a big one, Rich. I think there is only one right answer. Pull-ups or chin-ups?
I had a problem because I told you of this injury I have. I love pull-ups. They were one of my favorites. Chin-ups are done this way, or pull-ups.
Pull-ups, chin-ups.
Yeah, so I like using more. Chin-ups are this way, correct?
I'm completely doing. No, chin-ups are this way.
Chin-ups are this way. Yeah, so these are chin-ups. Chin-ups work more the bicep and back, but they do work the back. But when you do a pull-up, it will work your lat width really, really well. It's one of the best exercises in working your back. I pick pull-ups. Chin-ups are actually easier than pull-ups. When you're using a pull-up, you're using all your back. When you're using chin-up, you use a lot of your bicep.
You see, that's why I thought there was one right answer, because pull-ups really just make you work your ass off. But I mean, both are pretty good. Not that I can do either of them. Now, Rich, it's been the biggest honor and privilege. Before we go, is there anything that you want to plug?
Just check out the line. If you haven't seen Gaspari Nutrition, go to my website, Gaspari Nutrition.
Yep.
Gasparinutrition.com. we got a lot of different array of products. You know, it's not just a bodybuilding line. There's like health and wellness products on there. We have some of the best omega-3 fat, fish oils. We have greens and reds. We have a lot of health products, as well as some of the best pre-workout products. You know, the products that we have for the bodybuilding is you talked about it: Super Pump Aggression, Plasma Jet, Anavite, Sizon. Those are products to use if you're going to use anything. The pre-workout Super Pump Aggression along with Sizon, two great products to use to make great gains.
Agreed. I mean, the Plasma Jet had my muscles doubled from this. That's all I've got.
And everyone who uses it is one of my best-selling products. You know, just go to GaspariNutrition.com.
Oh.
I'm going to give you guys my discount code. My personal discount code is Rich30 to get 30 off. But we've run other sales, but at least you can get 30 off on the website. I do have another product line that I started.
Yes, I saw
called
that.
GaspariAgeless.com, and that's an anti-aging brand. Any of the older listeners that want to get products from there, we have anti-inflammatories, prostate products, collagen products, all different types of products that you can look at with GaspariAgeless.com.
And I mean, Rich, I might use it because while I'm young, I still want to look pretty out here. So
yeah. Collagen is a great product to use.
And guys, don't forget to check Instagram, Rich Gaspari, all lowercase. Guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out Gaspari Nutrition. Check out Rich's content. We have some big guests coming on the Underdog Talk. Until next time, 2 Underdogs out.